You ever watch somebody get called a trespasser on their own land? I have. And let me tell you, the punchline comes with an ambulance, not a laugh track. That day, my old man, a guy who's lived more years by a lake than most people spend in the same zip code, ended up face down in the grass, heart racing because some HOA rent-a-cop decided he didn't belong. You think I'm kidding? I wish I was. But that's how all this started. One quiet afternoon, one stubborn security guard, one HOA president with a look colder than the lake in February. My father, 62 years old, fishing on the patch of earth he practically grew up on. And the next thing I know, he's in the hospital. My mom's voice cracking through the phone at 11:17 on a Tuesday night. It's your father. His heart. That's not the kind of sentence you ever forget. Not because of the heart thing, well, okay, a little because of that, but mostly because of what drove him there. Picture a guy who never once asked for help with anything, spent his whole life building, fixing, carrying, just doing what needed to be done. They threw him down like a trespasser on land his own dad cleared with a damn handsaw, humiliated him in front of neighbors, called an ambulance, thought that was the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. So there I am driving 3 hours through the dark from Portland. Radio off. Just my mother's words looping over and over. You know how silence feels thick, like you could reach out and pull pieces of it apart. That's how those 3 hours went. By the time I get to the hospital, it's after 2 in the morning. That weird hum in the hallways, just beeping monitors, nurses' footsteps, the smell of old coffee and bleach. My mom's out there clutching a cup that's gone cold, eyes swollen, telling me it wasn't a heart attack, but his heart rhythm went haywire from the stress. He'd be under observation till morning. I asked her to tell me everything, all of it. Turns out Dad had gone to the lake, same as always, rod, tackle box, old folding chair. He was maybe half an hour in when the security guard showed up. Said the land belonged to Pinewood Lake Estates, that Dad had to leave. My dad, in classic fashion, tried to explain. Told him his name, told him about the deed, about 70 years of family history. The guard didn't care. Soon enough, there's another guard, and then her, the president, Deborah Bailey. You ever see someone get looked at like they're not all there? Like a dog that's wandered off leash? That's the look she gave my dad. She tells him the lake's a community amenity run by the HOA, non-members not allowed. He pulls out his ID, points across the water to our old cabin, says, "That's mine. Been in my family since '52. Deborah nods at the guard, just a little nod, and the guard grabs Dad's arm, tries to haul him up. Dad's knee gives out. The guard shoves. Down goes my father hard in front of a handful of neighbors. One of them later told my mom that Deborah just stood there, arms folded. No reaction. Someone called 911. By the time the medics got there, Dad's clutching his chest, barely able to breathe. Stress-induced arrhythmia, that's what they called it. And as he's loaded into the ambulance, Deborah tells everyone not to worry. The HOA's handling it. How's any of that possible, right? How can some HOA claim a private lake, toss somebody off land that's never belonged to them? Hang on, I'll get to that. First, you got to understand the history. My granddad, Henry Reed, bought 12 acres up here in 1952. That included the lake, 8 acres of water, Silver Lake they called it. He built the cabin himself, raised my dad out here. When the Pinewood Lake Estate subdivision came along in '85, they built all around us. Plat maps, deeds. Every document says our land is private, not part of the development. The HOA. They don't have a deed or an easement or any legal claim. None. I sat in that hospital, the anger starting low, cold, heavy. Not the kind that boils over, the kind that sinks into your bones and just sits. They called my father a trespasser, put him in the hospital, treated him like a criminal, and they thought that was it. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Here's the twist no one saw coming. I'm not just some grieving son. I'm a real estate attorney. 8 years working property disputes in Portland. I know every inch of Oregon land law, titles, easements, trespass, you name it. They thought they could steamroll an old man and a family who'd just lie down. Bad read. Next morning I drive out to the cabin. Dad's still in the hospital. Mom's with him. I need to see the property myself. The drive's all winding roads through pines, past houses that weren't even there when my granddad first built the place. But the island's still there, our land, our lake. At least that's what every paper says. The air's cold, thick with pine and wet earth. Every step feels like going back in time fishing trips with Grandpa, learning to cast stories about building the cabin with nothing but grit. But at the tree line, things change. There's a sign now, big white fresh posts. Pinewood Lake Estates. Private lake members only. Violators will be prosecuted. You know that feeling when you realize someone's moved your stuff without asking, multiply that by about 1,000. I check the posts, they're new. Then I find a dock, a fancy one pro-built on our land. Not some weekend project money went into this. There's a posted board, rules, no swimming after dark, fishing by permit only, HOA logos everywhere, trash cans, benches, a gravel path leading back to the main trail. They'd built all this on land they didn't own. And in Oregon, that's trespass. Doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. If you don't have permission or a recorded easement, you're out of luck. And if you collect money on a property you don't own, that's fraud. I circle the whole property. 4 signs, the dock, the benches, the rules board. Someone had sunk a lot of money, years worth, probably decades. How long had they been pretending our lake was their amenity? Who signed off on it? And where'd the money come from? Grandpa Henry, he was never one for confrontation. When the subdivision popped up, I bet he just shrugged, let the neighbors use the lake out of kindness. That's who he was. But somewhere along the way, kindness got twisted into entitlement. They took his generosity and used it against us. And now they're calling his son a trespasser. If you've ever had an HOA get too big for its britches, you know this feeling, anger, disbelief, the whole mix. They never ask. They just take. And for 30 years, nobody pushed back. Well, I'm not Grandpa. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. GPS coordinates, sign, wording, condition. Then I started asking questions. How long's this been going on? How much have they collected in lake fees? Who's behind all this? That afternoon, Dad gets out of the hospital. I head to the HOA office, one of those tidy little buildings with the gold-lettered sign out front wedged between a coffee shop and a real estate office. I walk in, keeping calm. The receptionist, barely old enough to rent a car, asks if I have an appointment. I say no, but I need to see someone about an incident involving my father in the lake. She gets nervous when I say lake. Calls up to the president. Deborah Bailey meets me 10 minutes later. She's got that smile, the kind that's practiced polite and means nothing. Her office is all plaques and certificates, awards for community leadership. She's built an image that's for sure. I get right to it. My father was removed from his own land by your security. He ended up in the hospital. What's the HOA's claim to the lake? She doesn't flinch. Silver Lake is a community amenity managed by us for 30 years. Your family doesn't have exclusive rights. Why didn't I call the police? I did. Deputy came out, heard both sides, said it was a civil matter, take it to court. That's America for you. If it's not a burglary or a brawl, cops don't get involved. That means it's on me. I lean in. We have the deed. It's been Reed property since 1952. Show me any document that gives the HOA rights. She dodges. Our records aren't for non-members. I push. If you've got a deed, transfer, an easement, anything, show it. Her smile cracks. What you have is an old family deed and a lot of assumptions. We've used that lake for 30 years, that's established use. If you want to fight, go ahead. But it's expensive. Here's the kicker, she's hinting at prescriptive easement. In Oregon, use someone's land openly for 10 years and you might gain a right to keep using it, but only if the owner objects. If it's by permission, even a nod and a handshake, it doesn't count. That night, sitting with Dad on the porch, the lake glowing orange in the sunset, he says, "Your grandpa called this the soul of the family. He let the neighbors use it to be kind, not because they owned it. I guess he was too kind. I can see how tired he looks, like this took something out of him he won't get back. They used his father's decency as a weapon. So I called Angela, best property lawyer I know, old friend from the firm. I lay out everything, deed maps, the signs, the dock, the security incident. She listens. Then she says, if your deed includes the lake and there's no recorded easement, the HOA's not just trespassing, they're running a fraud. She asks for every document. The original deed, the plat maps, photographs, the whole shebang. She wants to see if the HOA's been collecting money on property they don't own. I have to decide, do I want a quiet settlement or public exposure? Most people would take the money and move on. But money doesn't undo what happened to my dad. It doesn't erase that word trespasser. So I tell Angela no settlement. I want this out in the open. I want everyone to see what's been going on. That night I dig through Grandpa's old boxes. Decades of papers, insurance, taxes, maps. At 4 p.m. I find the jackpot, a manila folder labeled Property Lake. There's the deed, survey maps, and a letter from 1987 addressed to the HOA signed by my grandfather. It says in plain words, he allows neighbors to use the lake as a courtesy, revocable at any time, not a transfer of rights. In writing, sent to the HOA. Angela calls back, this changes everything. If they got that letter and kept collecting fees, it's not just carelessness, it's fraud. Every fee, every sale advertising lake access, that's potentially illegal. She asks if I'm ready to take on people with deep pockets and connections. I tell her absolutely. Next morning, I'm at the county records office at 8 a.m. Get the deed, the plats, the HOA covenants, every paper trail. The deed's ironclad 12 acres Silver Lake included since 1952. Plat maps from 85 clearly show our land excluded from the subdivision. The HOA's original rules. No mention of the lake at all. In 2008, the HOA suddenly amends their bylaws, adds a $200 per household lake maintenance assessment. But the lake isn't even theirs. That's $30,000 a year, over $450,000 in 15 years. When I do the math, it's almost $500,000 collected for a lake they never owned. I have to admit, when I realized how much money was involved, my hands started shaking. I wanted to confront Deborah right then. Angela stopped me. Don't tip your hand. Build the case. I keep digging. 14 of 17 home listings in the last 10 years mention lake access. That's real estate fraud. Higher prices, higher commissions. Richard Bailey, the board secretary and Deborah's husband, handles most of those sales. Now here's the real kicker. The inside man. Someone sends me an envelope in the mail. No return address, just HOA, financial statements for 7 years. Every year, 45 to 75 grand collected, most spent on vague categories, maintenance, preservation, contractor services. I dig further payments, tens of thousands going to Bailey Property Services, LLC, Richard Bailey's shell company. Angela looks at the records and says, this isn't just trespass. It's embezzlement, criminal fraud. We prepare everything. Deed letters, records, Roy's notebooks, the neighbor who's tracked the scam for 15 years. He gives me board meeting notes, fee schedules, even newsletters where Deborah slowly started calling the lake a community resource. Every dollar accounted for lake fees, home sales, maintenance contracts paid to her husband's company. The scam's been going on for years, maybe $750,000. We file suit. The newspaper gets wind. Suddenly the whole subdivision's buzzing. People approach me at HOA meetings. Some want copies of the complaint. Some want to know if they can get their fees back. Deborah's calm is cracking. The judge orders an audit, orders all HOA activities on our land to stop, and tells Deborah to get her own lawyer. Criminal charges may follow. I sit in court, Dad at my side, as Angela lays it all out. The judge grants a preliminary injunction. Everything stops. Structures removed, audit ordered, the Bailey's empire finally starting to collapse. So here's my moment of honesty, the one that sits heavier than any courtroom win. Justice, when it finally lands, doesn't feel like fireworks. It's not even satisfying, really. It's more like relief, a long exhale after holding your breath for years. But it's also the truth laid bare, undeniable. Now let me throw it to you. If it was your family, if someone twisted your kindness, stole from your neighbors, and tried to run you off your own land, what would you do? Would you settle quietly or drag it into the light for everyone to see? And where do you draw the line between looking out for yourself and standing up for something bigger? Tell me, have you ever had to take on people who thought they were untouchable? What did you do? And do you think I did the right thing? Or would you have played it differently? I want to hear your story.